There's a multi-million dollar blind spot in the workforce that's draining productivity, it's increasing turnover, and it's costing businesses millions. Now, in this episode, we'll uncover how visionary leaders can turn this hidden crisis into a competitive advantage, boosting retention, engagement, and bottom line results.
Welcome to Fortify Live with your host, Saeks.
Now, my guest today is Sue Ryan. She's the Chief Inspirationalist and Caregiving Strategist. She's on a mission to help businesses and employees thrive by addressing the caregiving crisis head on. Now, and the best part is that these solutions can be implemented right now. Let's get into it, Sue. Define what you mean by caregiving in a workplace.
Caregiving in a workplace. What I'm talking about that is that every single employee in your workforce can be a family caregiver as well as a working employee. Caregiving doesn't discriminate. And so when we talk about the fact that it is costing businesses on an annual basis about $33 billion in productivity costs, it's because anyone, CEO, board chairman, entry-level position, can be having a dual role of being a family caregiver at home and a valued employee at work.
Well, you know, most leaders, they don't even realize that caregiving crisis is impacting their businesses. What do you think is the business sign, what do you think is the biggest sign facing them today?
And the reason that I'm doing what I'm doing, when it says chief inspirationalist, it's to help people really, really recognize that the costs of this are throughout their business. It manifests itself in a variety of different ways that may not show up as an absolute, but it's the absenteeism, it's the presenteeism, it's the increase in costs for healthcare. It is employees who are leaving and never self-identifying that they're a family caregiver because there aren't mechanisms to support it. It's people who are having mental health challenges. It's struggling with team performance. It shows up in a variety of different ways throughout the business. And it really is the next business frontier of how do we make our businesses more successful.
All right. Well, we're live right now on Facebook and LinkedIn and YouTube, and we've got listeners from entrepreneurs, franchisees, franchisors, private equity groups, business owners, everything, right? And so when we talk about this topic today in the green room, you know, Chief Inspirationalist, we're listening to Sue Ryan. You can find her at SueRyan.solutions. That's right, .solutions. So SueRyan.solutions. So, but I'm curious, a lot of business owners might think this is just an HR problem. Is that a big mistake?
It is a huge mistake. It is absolutely not just an HR problem. It is a problem that HR has the ability to help turn on solutions that already exist in other areas. The issue with recognizing family caregivers and address it starts at the CEO level. And the reason that that's important is that the majority of family caregivers, because there aren't already programs to support them, they don't self-identify. The businesses don't know they're there. You have team members who are struggling and you don't know. When the CEO says, we recognize family caregivers, we embrace them, let's start having these conversations, then HR can help train managers how to normalize the conversation. They can leverage programs that already exist to bring things in. You want to start with the CEO going, hey, this is an issue, we're addressing it. And many times the CEOs, like Indra Nooyi, the former CEO of PepsiCo, said, hey, it's me. I am family caregiver and I am struggling and I see what it is. So when they start the conversation, everyone else throughout the organization can then carry it on and work with the impacts of it.
But are there any risks involved? I mean, you know, when I think about this topic, you know, and I've had hundreds of employees, my sporting goods company had over 140 employees. I don't know if I'd feel comfortable talking to them about their caregiving needs. Help me with my perspective. Is it me just worried about not wanting to get into their personal business, or is it me supporting them so they can feel that they're valued and that they have the time they need to take care of things?
I'll flip the question and ask you one. Do you feel comfortable if you had an employee who had a child who needed to go to the doctor? Do you feel comfortable saying it would be easy as anything for them to say, hey, I'm going to take my son to the doctor this morning. I'll be in at around 10.
Yeah, because I mean, I grew up as an orphan, so certainly I have a soft spot when anybody says anything with kids. I've got a person on my staff right now that's pregnant. I've got other ones that have kids. So moms are priority, or dads too, you know, they're priority. So I guess if I thought about it that way, it makes a lot of sense.
Yes, it should be as easy for me to say, I've got to take my mom to the doctor. My mom's got dementia. It should be as easy for me to say that. It should be as easy for me when I'm sitting in a team meeting and we're talking about how do we coordinate schedules? How do we get things done? And we have someone who is getting ready to go out on maternity leave and we're working to adapt our team so that we're able to stay productive. When we have someone who's got caregiving responsibilities, when they're able to share openly that I've got some of these demands on my time, then the teams work around them. We've already done that before. We already know about it. It's something that if the CEO starts and says we're going to normalize this conversation, then it simplifies it throughout the organization, and it becomes what I have I have a dream. I have a dream that within 3 years, you don't want me to be talking about this because it's a non-issue.
Yeah, but I think it is an issue today because I don't think that
Huge.
I don't think, and this is just me. It's my show. I can say what I want, but to me, it seems like a lot of organizations, I don't think would feel comfortable because it's not treated the same way. I think that it's a culture shift. And I think as we all get older and we know the older generations are retiring and parents are, people are taking care of their parents and so forth.
Sure.
This becomes a much bigger issue, just the world that we live in, but it's not a normalized conversation now. What do you, I know you said start with the CEO, but then how does it become part of the culture, part of the communication?
Yes. That's a great question because when people have permission to have the conversation. So, for example, my first family caregiving role began when I was in my mid-20s, and I was a business professional, and I was not able to self-identify that I was a caregiver and a business professional. And I had challenges. I had multiple caregiving roles over the 40 years as a business professional, never self-identifying. When we start having those conversations and we're able to talk about the fact that this is something that's going on, it's not necessarily that people are going to need a lot of change of what they're doing. It's the ability to say, hey, I've got to make a call to try to get some Medicare things worked out. I've got to get my dad to the doctor. I've got these things. So if they can just have it, people can work around it like they've worked around other things. The concept of the training of the conversation is the same as having done that with other groups and other areas that have started to have conversations normalized. DEI is a very good example of that. 10 years ago, conversations weren't had. Now people have been trained to have it. People are encouraged to have conversations. People are accepting of it. This is no different than that. It's just a different conversation. And right now, the numbers are staggering and increasing. And one of the things, Ford, that makes this so important, you're asking, why is it important? By the year 2030, more of us will be over the age of 65 in the United States than under the age of 18. And the fastest growing demographic in the United States is people 85 years and older. And so in the concept of the fact that we have so many people who are going to be in roles of family caregiving from when they're in their 50s, 40s, 30s, and 20s, so much of your workforce are going to be caring for their older loved ones who are living longer and who, by the way, don't have the ability to be earning the kind of income they had. So now they're more of a financial consideration for employees. On multiple levels, it becomes more valuable to normalize these conversations.
Well, I know that, you work as a speaker, as a strategy, and as a consultant. When you go into organizations and you prepare a workshop or a presentation, take me through the journey of a workshop. So what you bring them all together and they're in a room. What happens before, during, and after? How do they transform their thinking when they came in with resistance and they leave with a whole new perspective?
Sure. The number one thing I make sure of beforehand is that organizationally, the conversation has been normalized to the point where anyone coming into the workshop feels like they can share that they're a caregiver. They may not know exactly what the offerings are. They may not know exactly how to be adaptive. But when we have exercises, when everyone can share what their responsibilities are and their considerations are and their concerns are, it makes it a more creative exercise. So, for example, let's say you're in your mid 40s to early 50s. You've got a lot of institutional knowledge in the company. You also have your parents you're perhaps starting to care for, as well as perhaps their parents. So you've got financial considerations there. You still have your children. that you're caring for financially. So when you look at the responsibilities, there's called the sandwich generation, and there's several of those. You're sandwiched in the middle, caring for your own current and future needs and those of generations ahead of you and generations behind you. So when we have a workshop, when we're sitting there working together productively, we look at every single team member. Where are some of the challenges you have? Younger team members who have come into their employment. They don't have benefits, very many benefits. They don't have a lot of time off. They've come in with some student debt. They don't have a big financial cushion. So they can't afford to take time off to take mom to the doctor kind of a thing, especially if they can't self-identify as that. So in the room, we encourage everyone to have permission to share any of their relationship with it. And they may not have a relationship with it. There may be nothing going on. However, when you look at structuring a team, how do you structure a team to be productive? This is no different than when we were looking at, all right, we're remote or we're working in the office or we're hybrid. It's just a different conversation. We've had different kinds of conversations like this before, just a different topic.
So if you have, an organization, sometimes, you mentioned in the top of the episode that, it's important for the CEO to lead from the top down. But what if you are that caregiver and you work for that organization and you want to express that this is something that's important to be discussed? I mean, do they go to HR? Do they send a letter? Do they, mail an anonymous book that has the details on it? I mean, how does somebody who's maybe in that position, maybe they're listening to this episode right now and they're thinking, this is me, I'm taking care of my parents, and what, if anything, can they do to help spark that conversation?
This is such a rich question, Ford. I'm really glad you're asking that because it doesn't have one answer. It deals a lot with, as you brought up already, it deals a lot with the organizational culture and the concern people have with, even if they go to HR and it's confidential, that the company wouldn't be supporting what they're doing. One of the saddest things we hear of is the number of people who have left a company never self-identifying. So the company doesn't know they lost someone because they had caregiving responsibilities. So the company doesn't learn anything more about it. And the employee is afraid to self-identify because they may need a reference so that they can try to get another job. So the most impactful thing we can try to do is to create that safe space, which is why the easiest way to do that is to have the leader of the organization say, hey, you guys, we recognize this touches all areas and all employees, either indirectly or directly, and we're going to normalize the conversation and we're going to embrace it. When that's not done, when people don't feel safe, even from an HR perspective, sharing it, that's where we have the biggest issues because people still today, I talked with someone last week and they're trying to find a new job because they're not going to be able to maintain their responsibilities. And I talked with a gentleman who was working for a huge company in the United States who was fired because of his caregiving responsibilities. So in this day and age, when you would think that that was not done, this was in the past year.
Yeah, I don't think that
Big
organizations are talking about this. I speak and train in organizations, big brands, small brands. And whenever I ask the pre-event questionnaire to the group, I'll say, what are the top 3 challenges facing your organization? I specialize in accelerating business growth. Well, obviously a huge part of that is employees. How do you find them, attract them, retain them, and engage them, right? And I think that this is part of that conversation around culture and leadership is to add that variable in. I'm passionate about your desire to help make that a conversation because in all of my guests, hundreds of episodes, you're the first guest that's ever said, hey, this is something that's important. And I think that you're on the cutting edge, not the bleeding edge, but you're on the forefront of this. You ought to be on all the news channels talking about this. I know you've got a book,
shouldn't I?
I know you've got a book coming out, which will be good, but I think that your passion to go out and have these conversations with organizations. I mean, let's get clear, everybody. We're not talking about how do we give employees more time off. We're talking about how do you retain them and engage them? Because if they feel trusted, like I have people on my team that have communicated that they're taking care of elderly people. So it became normalized for me, but they brought it to me. I didn't start the conversation by saying, oh, by the way, at Prime Concepts, here are some of the things. I mean, we talk about our core values and our mission statement, but it's never been part of the conversation. Parenting has been, kids have been, but not taking care of elderly. So I think that our aging parents, I might be using the word wrong, but everybody understands. So do you do workshops now? I know you're doing Keynote. So tell us a little bit about who's the ideal audience. Now it sounds like everybody, but who's the ideal audience that should bring you into their organization?
Sure. And I'll get to that. I'd like to make one comment based on something you had that kind of puts some things in perspective, which is we have more seniors needing care than children needing child care. If you want to put numbers in perspective, so we talk about wanting to make sure we get kids to childcare and we've got these programs for them. We have more seniors needing care. And so what I'm doing, because when you talk about improving business and accelerating business, you've already got it in the business. There are so many ways in the business that you can tap into people who aren't able to be as productive as they want to be. So what I do when I go in to do a workshop or when I speak, I'm passionate. I'd like to be on the biggest platforms in the world speaking to CEOs about this because they can flip the switch. And when I talk about it, the conversation Ford, it can happen so quickly because you've already, think about this, in other than very, very small companies, you have financially, legally, operationally, procedurally, teamwork-wise, already figured out how to navigate this with other things. So if I go in when I'm doing a workshop, when I'm giving a keynote, all I'm doing is connecting people to things they've already done, they can leverage so they can accelerate this and eliminate it. And it's not going away.
Yeah, I thought I used my sound effects today, but yeah, I agree it's not. And I think that organizations are a lot closer to implementing these types of things. And again, everybody, the benefit of doing this is to engage and retain your staff. You don't lose, think about how much money you lose during turnover. You lose the brain trust, you lose the communications, you have recruiting costs. Studies will show that it might take anywhere from 6 months to 2 years to replace that person, depending upon their role. And that's if you recruit the right person in the first recruitment and the right candidate. And so this really is a serious problem that has its ripple effects in the organization. And, what do you think the cost of it is? And now for the record, everybody, these are unscripted conversations. Sue has no idea what I'm going to ask. So, but what do you think that the impact is, the negative impact in the organizations as far as financial?
Well, funny you should ask, just to be on this prepared side of this. All right. Conservatively, and the reason I say conservatively is a lot of these aren't being measured because people don't self-identify. Here in the United States alone, on an annual basis, the lost productivity and performance in businesses is estimated at $33 billion. Okay. Caregivers, yes. The unpaid contributions already by family caregivers in the United States exceeds $600 billion a year. That's people doing caregiving responsibilities outside work, not being paid for it, and it's impacting their ability to work when they can't self-identify. And for just one diagnosis, that's estimated that 15.3 billion hours of unpaid caregiving support are provided every year. So when we talk about the costs of it, and you look at other things where we've navigated when they talked about cybersecurity and that being a business frontier and addressing it, if you could turn hidden costs of up to $33 billion in the country, but think of what your percentage of it as a company is. And you could turn those around. When you talk about improving profits, when you talk about productivity, when you talk about all those things, they're sitting right there waiting for you.
Well, so let's say I have an organization of 100 people, there's a great percentage of them that are probably taking care of it. From a business standpoint, you're always looking at profitability and performance and, the bottom line dollars, and you're also looking at your employees and the culture, and it's always between culture and leadership and communication and team building and change. There's all these things coming at us. Do you think this is something I kind of do, but I think this is something that should be written into the recruiting process, the onboarding process. It should be part of the procedures manual. There should be part of the HR. I mean, it's really a shift. Like you said, they already have a lot of the variables in place. This is just adding one more thing to the conversation to make it easier for employees to feel valued and taken care of. So you don't silently have people struggling and then leaving because they have poor performance because they're struggling with all these things. Because I don't think it's something natural that they, up until now, where they want to say it. I mean, I don't think that a lot of employees would feel comfortable saying, hey, I have to take my mom to the doctor, because the conversation would be like, well, wait, that's not my problem. You should arrange for that.
Yes. And so 2 things about what you just said, because it's so powerful. There are companies who've already embraced this, who've already said this is a great thing. Companies like Starbucks, Deloitte, there are other major organizations, Amazon. And what they have found is employee retention, employee satisfaction, productivity, costs, healthcare costs, all these things. The numbers have gotten so positive, like increases in employee satisfaction of like 25%. You talked about recruiting and hiring. People want now to go to companies who embrace, who have recognized that caregiving is something. And they're like, do you have policies that support that? And when you think about implementing it, and you think about, okay, if there are all these hidden costs, how much is it going to cost me to actually do something about it? Well, my first answer would be, how much is it costing you now not to do anything about it?
Right.
And then when you think of the fact that all you need to do is flip the switch and adapt things you've already got, you're not talking about huge financial investments in changing something. You're talking about allowing something that's already there to just be adapted.
All right. So what's an exercise? Let's pretend our listeners are saying, okay, they're taking notes. And again, if you're listening to the audio podcast on the Business Growth Show, this audio from the live broadcast becomes the podcast. It's Sue Ryan, SUE. So Sue Ryan, RYAN, pretty easy to name, SueRyan.solutions. What's an exercise? Let's say someone's listening to this and they're all excited about this and they're in HR. So they have the power, or maybe they're in leadership. They have the power to do something about it. Where should they start?
2 different places I would recommend people start. The first thing, after you've had the executive team say, we support, we embrace, we recognize caregiving, there is going to be no issue if you acknowledge that you're a caregiver. The first thing that you may choose to do is to have an anonymous survey in the organization. And if you want to make it really, really anonymous, you have it conducted by an outside third party. And questions are asked. So you can have the fact that no one in the company is going to see what the responses are. And that allows the people who are caregivers to feel even more secure and confident sharing the depth of what it is. So you're able to get a lens into what it really looks like. That's one exercise to do. Another exercise, once you've embraced this, is a fabulous team exercise. We always do these great team exercises.
Right.
How do we improve productivity? And you talk about, all right, if we've got caregiving scenarios, just like no different. Again, maternity, other kinds of scenarios. Somebody breaks a leg, they're going to be out for a while. And so you walk through, how will we navigate this when we have projects that we're doing? And so you create a project or you adapt a project you've currently got. And you work together on it and you see how straightforward the process can be. And then the team members can also start cross-training when there are areas where there might be challenges. So everybody adapts. We're a very adaptive environment.
That makes so much sense. Well, what are some final thoughts that you'd like to leave with our listeners today?
This is something that is exponentially growing. The numbers are staggering. There's no need for me to even put any other numbers up. They're growing significantly. So this is not something that's going to go away. If you are a family caregiver, work with your organization, find a way to work with your organization, call me, do whatever you can so that you have the opportunity. Do not do this without being able to share it so that caregiving is a lot of work anyway, so that you're getting support. If you are an employer, if you're an executive, look around. Have you normalized the conversation yet about caregiving? If you're in HR, where are the opportunities that you could adapt current programs to incorporate that, take that to the executives and show them so that everybody has the opportunity to flip the switch based on where they are coming from with this so that they can address and support caregivers. And one final point with that, play your podcast, play this podcast episode for them.
Wow, Sue, that was fantastic. I hope that everybody shares this episode, comment below, and check her out. You can obviously connect with her on LinkedIn because she's got resources that will help you have this conversation in your organization. Sue, thanks for being here today.
Thanks, Ford. I appreciate the opportunity. And for everybody who's a caregiver and every business with caregivers, I wish you all the best. Let's get this going.
Awesome. Well, thanks for tuning in to Fortify Live. We're all about accelerating business growth. Until next time, keep innovating, keep growing, and keep fortifying your success.
Thank you for tuning in to Fortify Live. Make sure to like, comment, and share this episode on your favorite social media platform. And don't forget to subscribe to the Business Growth Show podcast, available wherever you get your podcast streaming fix. We air weekly at 11 a.m. Central Time. So until next week, keep pushing the boundaries and never stop growing.